What was life like in the Wild West? The year 1865 marked a significant turning point in American history, with over 30,000 miles of train tracks crisscrossing the vast expanse of the United States. The end of the Civil War brought newfound freedom for many, particularly those who had been enslaved, and sparked a wave of migration westward as millions sought opportunity and a fresh start. The concept of manifest destiny fueled this westward expansion, portraying it as a noble endeavor to spread civilization across the untamed frontier. However, the reality was far more complex. The West was indeed a meeting ground between differing cultures and ways of life, as one 19th century historian famously observed. It was a land of vast plains, towering mountains, and rugged terrain, where the clash between indigenous peoples and settlers played out against a backdrop of sweeping landscapes. The exploitation of natural resources was rampant during this era. Buffalo, once numbering in the millions, were hunted to near extinction for their hides, leaving devastating consequences for Native American communities who depended on them for sustenance and cultural significance. The establishment of new towns along cattle routes brought both opportunity and conflict. Lawlessness was a common occurrence, with ruthless cowboys and outlaws terrorizing communities and prompting the need for self-governance and the establishment of makeshift systems of law and order. Despite the challenges and hardships, the Wild West era was a time of unparalleled adventure and opportunity for many. It was a period of rapid change, where the promise of untold riches and boundless freedom beckoned to those brave enough to venture into the unknown. The spirit of resilience and determination that characterized life on the frontier endures as a testament to the enduring legacy of the American West. Number 1. Millions of bison were slaughtered. In the early 1800s, America's plains were home to an astonishing sight: millions of bison, or American buffalo, freely roaming the land. Estimates suggest their numbers ranged from 10 to 30 million, a testament to their prominence in the ecosystem and Native American culture. However, by the turn of the 20th century, this majestic species faced a dire threat. Shockingly, the once teeming herds had dwindled to less than 1,000 individuals. The decline was not due to natural causes, but rather a result of relentless slaughter. The systematic decimation of bison populations was driven by various factors, including the expansion of the United States and the desire to subjugate Native American tribes. Bison were not only hunted for sport, but also targeted as a means of depriving indigenous peoples of their primary source of sustenance and materials. The United States Army, along with hired hunters, played a central role in the slaughter. The sentiment of the time was epitomized by one colonel's chilling directive: "Kill every buffalo you can. Every buffalo dead is an Indian gone." This ruthless pursuit of eradication reflected a dark chapter in American history, marked by the exploitation and destruction of both wildlife and indigenous cultures. Even figures like Buffalo Bill Cody, celebrated for their frontier exploits, contributed to the carnage, with Cody himself reputedly claiming the lives of 4,000 bison in just 2 years. By 1889, the bison population had plummeted to its lowest point, with a mere 256 individuals in captivity. It seemed that this iconic species, once synonymous with the American West, was on the brink of extinction. Fortunately, efforts to conserve and restore bison populations have yielded promising results. Today, the bison population has rebounded to an estimated 150,000 to 200,000 individuals. While this resurgence is heartening, it serves as a reminder of the fragility of wildlife and the enduring impact of human actions on the natural world. The story of the near destruction and subsequent recovery of the American bison serves as a poignant lesson in conservation and stewardship. It underscores the importance of preserving biodiversity and respecting the interconnectedness of all living beings on our planet. Number 2, gun control was stricter back then. When we picture the Old West, it's easy to conjure up images of dusty saloons and rugged cowboys with guns strapped to their hips. But the reality was often quite different, especially in the early days of settlement on the frontier. In many towns across the Old West, there were strict laws regulating the carrying of firearms within city limits. Places like Deadwood, Dodge City, Abilene, and Tombstone had ordinances in place that required individuals to surrender their weapons upon entering town. It was a system akin to today's coat check, except instead of coats, it was guns. Visitors to these towns would have to check their guns with the local sheriff, who would then provide them with a token in exchange. This ensured that firearms were kept out of public spaces where they could potentially lead to violence or unrest. The idea was simple. By limiting the presence of guns in town, authorities aimed to maintain peace and order in burgeoning frontier communities. Of course, there were exceptions to these rules. Residents of these towns were typically allowed to keep their firearms in their homes for self-defense and protection. This distinction recognized the practical need for individuals to safeguard themselves and their property against potential threats, particularly in an environment where law enforcement resources were often limited. The stricter gun control measures of the Old West may come as a surprise to those who have been influenced by Hollywood's portrayal of the era. While there were undoubtedly instances of gun violence and lawlessness, many frontier towns recognized the importance of regulating firearms to maintain civility and security within their communities. Looking back, the gun control policies of the Old West offer an intriguing glimpse into the challenges faced by early settlers as they sought to establish law and order on the frontier. It's a reminder that the debate over gun control is not a new phenomenon, but rather a long-standing issue that has evolved alongside the changing landscape of American society. Number 3, dead outlaws were propped up and photographed. In the Wild West era, tales of gangs and notorious outlaws captivated the imagination of people across the country. Their exploits were not only chronicled in newspapers, but also embellished in contemporary books, adding to their legendary status. However, when these outlaws met their end in a blaze of glory, townspeople and authorities sought tangible proof of their demise. Enter photography, a groundbreaking invention of the early 19th century. Suddenly, there was a means to satisfy both the curiosity of the public and the desire of authorities to send a clear message to potential lawbreakers. The practice of propping up the corpses of dead outlaws for a final photograph emerged as a morbid yet effective way to achieve this. Imagine the scene: a group of townsfolk gathering around the lifeless bodies of notorious criminals. Some arranged in a haphazard pile, while others stood upright and supported by makeshift props. These macabre photographs served as a grim reminder of the consequences of a life of crime, intended to deter any would-be lawbreakers from following a similar path. It's a chilling thought, realizing that these images captured the final moments of individuals who once instilled fear and awe in the hearts of many. Yet, it's also a testament to the power of photography to document history, no matter how gruesome or unsettling. While the practice of photographing dead outlaws may seem barbaric by today's standards, it was a reflection of the harsh realities of frontier justice and the need for communities to maintain order in lawless territories. In a time when the rule of law was often overshadowed by violence and chaos, these photographs served as a stark reminder of the consequences of crossing the line. Number 4, the first armed bank robbery occurred in Massachusetts. Contrary to popular belief, the scene of the first bank robbery in America wasn't the Wild West. It actually unfolded in Massachusetts in 1831, long before the Wild West era took hold. However, this initial heist didn't involve guns. Instead, it was executed using forged keys. The first instance of a stick-up style bank robbery, unrelated to wartime, occurred in 1863, right in Malden, Massachusetts. The event turned deadly when Edward Green, the 32-year-old postmaster of the town, entered the Malden Bank with intentions far more sinister than just obtaining change. Green, burdened by debt and struggling with alcoholism, saw the bank as a potential solution to his financial woes when he walked in on December 15th. Only a 17-year-old boy, the son of the bank's president, was present at the time. In a shocking turn of events, Green shot the young man in the head before leaving the bank premises, with $5,000 in cash. equivalent to a substantial sum of over $105,000 in today's currency, Green fled the scene. However, suspicions were soon aroused when he was suddenly able to settle his debts despite his previously dire financial situation. Just a month later, Green reportedly confessed to the murder and was subsequently hanged in 1866. This grim series of events not only marked the first armed bank robbery in American history, but also resulted in Green becoming the first person to be executed for such a crime. It serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of greed, desperation, and the tragic loss of innocent lives in the pursuit of ill-gotten gains. Number 5. Want to dine like the Old West? You probably don't. When we think of dining in the Wild West, it's easy to romanticize the idea of hearty meals enjoyed around a campfire under the vast expanse of the open sky. But the reality was far from appetizing. Food in the Wild West was, to put it mildly, not exactly gourmet. Sure, breakfast might have been a somewhat redeeming meal, with offerings like cornbread, stew, boiled eggs, fried potatoes, and omelets. These dishes provided a glimpse of culinary satisfaction amidst the harsh realities of frontier life. However, even the breakfast spread was a far cry from the lavish spreads we're accustomed to today. As for dinner, well, let's just say it was an exercise in survival rather than culinary delight. Picture yourself sitting down to a meal of calf's head, boiled mutton, or soused calf's feet. These were the staples of a frontier family's dinner table in 1853. Dessert wasn't much of a consolation either, with pudding being a rare treat rather than a daily indulgence. Cooking methods were rudimentary, relying on basic tools like ovens, frying pans, and roasting spits. Ingredients were limited to whatever meat or vegetables were available at the time, often dependent on the season and the region's resources. For cowboys on the trail, meals were even more sparse. Canned beans, rock-hard biscuits, dried meat, dried fruit, and coffee were the standard fare. These simple, non-perishable items were easy to pack and provided the sustenance needed for long days in the saddle. While the idea of dining like the cowboys of the Old West may hold a certain romantic allure, the reality is that their diet was a testament to the challenges of frontier life. It's a reminder of how far we've come in terms of culinary sophistication and access to a diverse range of ingredients. So, the next time you sit down to a meal, take a moment to appreciate the abundance and variety that modern food culture has to offer. Number 6. Cowboy meant criminal. The term cowboy conjures up images of rugged individuals riding across vast plains, herding cattle, and embodying the spirit of the American frontier. Yet, in the context of the Old West, particularly in and around Arizona, the word had a different connotation altogether. It was synonymous with lawlessness and criminal activity. During the late 19th century, the term cowboy was often associated with outlaws and bandits who roamed the untamed territories of the American West. The San Francisco Examiner captured this sentiment in an 1881 editorial, describing cowboys as the most reckless class of outlaws, and portraying them as a menace to society. One of the most notorious groups associated with this criminal interpretation of cowboy culture was the Cowboys gang, who operated in and around the town of Tombstone. The Cowboys were infamous for their brazen acts of violence, including cattle rustling, bank robberies, and gunfights. Despite the romanticized portrayal of cowboys in popular culture, the reality was far more complex. For many settlers and law-abiding citizens of the Old West, encountering a cowboy often elicited fear and suspicion rather than admiration. The association of cowboys with criminality underscored the harsh realities of life on the frontier, where survival often depended on one's ability to navigate a lawless and unforgiving landscape. The Cowboys gang serves as a poignant reminder of the darker aspects of Western history, where lawlessness and violence were pervasive. Their exploits have become legendary, immortalized in tales of the Old West that continue to captivate the imagination of people around the world. In modern times, the term cowboy has taken on a more positive and nostalgic connotation, evoking images of bravery, independence, and rugged individualism. Yet, it is important to remember that the legacy of the Old West is complex encompassing both the heroic deeds of trailblazers and the darker deeds of those who exploited the lawlessness of the frontier for their own gain. The story of cowboys as criminals serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us of the dangers of romanticizing history and the importance of acknowledging its complexities. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring legacy of the American West, where the line between hero and outlaw was often blurred. Number 7. The deadliest outlaw was John Wesley Hardin. The story of John Wesley Hardin is a chilling tale of a life marked by violence and bloodshed. Hailing from Bonham, Texas, Hardin's descent into a world of gunfighting and murder began at a shockingly young age. At just 14 years old, he committed his first act of violence by stabbing a fellow student, an act that nearly claimed the young boy's life. But Hardin's violent tendencies only escalated from there. By the age of 15, he had already taken a life, gunning down his uncle's slave. In a display of audacity and ruthlessness, he went on to kill the 3 soldiers who pursued him after this heinous act. While Hardin's autobiography boasts of him having killed 44 men, the veracity of his claims is questionable, with many of his stories appearing to be exaggerated or outright fabricated. However, it is believed that he was responsible for at least half that number, possibly even up to 30 killings. Hardin's life seemed to revolve around a cycle of violence, with one murder seamlessly leading to the next. His encounter with Wild Bill Hickok in Abilene, Kansas, adds an intriguing twist to his story. Despite Hickok's role as marshal, he seemingly overlooked Hardin's criminal past, either out of ignorance or indifference. However, the fateful events of August 6, 1871, would change everything. In a drunken stupor, Hardin fatally shot a man in a neighboring hotel room simply because he couldn't tolerate the sound of his snoring. This callous act earned him the infamous reputation of being so mean, he once shot a man for snoring too loud. Fleeing from the consequences of his actions, Hardin managed to evade capture until 1875, when he was finally apprehended and convicted for the murder of a sheriff in Comanche, Texas. Despite being sentenced to 25 years, Hardin served only 17 before being inexplicably pardoned in 1894. Yet, his freedom was short-lived. In a twist of fate, Hardin met his end just a year later at the hands of a man he had quarreled with earlier in the day. Shot in the back of the head while playing dice, Hardin's violent and tumultuous life came to a brutal and abrupt conclusion. Number 8. Women were welcome in saloons. During the 1800s, the presence of women in bars was a rarity in the eastern United States, where societal norms and Puritan values dictated strict separation between the sexes. However, as one ventured westward, away from the influence of these cultural mores, a different scene unfolded. In the Western Territories, women could be found socializing alongside men in saloons, challenging the conventions of the time. While this may seem surprising given the era's prevailing attitudes towards gender roles, it reflects the unique dynamics of frontier life and the absence of rigid social norms. For many women in these Western communities, saloons offered opportunities for employment and independence that were not readily available elsewhere. Some of these women, often labeled as painted ladies or prostitutes, frequented the bars, seeking clients or engaging in entertainment roles. Among them were dance hall women, who served as entertainers and hostesses, bringing life to the saloon atmosphere through music, dance, and conversation. Their presence not only added to the ambiance, but also contributed to the economic success of the establishment, as they encouraged patrons to spend more on drinks. According to historical accounts, these saloon girls could earn a respectable income, with some reportedly making as much as $10 per week, a considerable sum for the time. In addition to their base pay, they often received commissions from the drinks they sold, providing further incentive to engage patrons and keep the atmosphere lively. While the presence of women in saloons may have raised eyebrows in more conservative circles, it was a reflection of the fluid and unconventional nature of frontier society. In these frontier towns, where traditional social hierarchies were less rigidly enforced, women found opportunities to carve out roles for themselves beyond the confines of domesticity. The acceptance of women in saloons also speaks to the egalitarian spirit of the frontier, where individuals were judged more by their contributions and abilities than by societal expectations based on gender. For many women, working in saloons provided a means of financial independence and social mobility, albeit within the constraints of the time. Number 9. Poker Alice made her fortune playing cards. In an era when gambling was predominantly a male pursuit, there were notable exceptions, and Alice Ivers Tubbs, famously known as Poker Alice, was one of them. Born in 1851 in England, Alice's life took an unconventional turn as she delved into the world of gambling under the tutelage of her first husband. Despite societal norms, she fearlessly embraced the poker tables of various saloons, armed not only with her skill, but also with a .38 special revolver for protection. Alice's presence at the poker tables was undoubtedly striking. Educated, elegantly dressed, and with a fondness for cigars, she defied expectations of what a woman of her time should be. Her boldness extended beyond the cards. She once demonstrated her courage by shooting a miner who posed a threat to her future husband. As she navigated the rough and tumble world of gambling, Alice encountered both triumphs and tragedies. She experienced the highs of amassing a substantial fortune, claiming to have won $250,000 through her prowess at the card table. Yet, she also faced the harsh realities of life, including the loss of loved ones and the need to defend herself and her business. Alice's entrepreneurial spirit shone through as she ventured into business ownership, even opening her own saloon during the era of Prohibition. Her determination and resilience were put to the test when she found herself in a life-threatening situation, ultimately resorting to self-defense and facing a trial for her actions. Despite the challenges she faced, Alice's legacy endures as a testament to her indomitable spirit and her ability to thrive in a male-dominated world. Her story serves as a reminder of the complex and multifaceted nature of history, highlighting the contributions of remarkable individuals who defied convention and left an indelible mark on their times. Alice passed away at the age of 79 in Rapid City, South Dakota, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate and inspire. Her life is a testament to the power of resilience, courage, and determination in the face of adversity, reminding us that true strength knows no gender. Number 10. Many brands from the Old West are still around. If you found yourself whisked away to the Old West and stumbled upon a quaint general store, you might be surprised to encounter some familiar brands lining the shelves. Despite the rugged frontier setting, certain household names manage to make their mark even in the wilds of the western frontier. Imagine stepping into that rustic store, the creak of the wooden floorboards beneath your boots, and the aroma of freshly baked bread mingling with the scent of leather and dust. Amidst the barrels of grain and shelves stocked with sundries, you spot recognizable labels like Quaker Oats, Royal Baking Powder, Baker's Chocolate, and Durkee. It's fascinating to think that these brands, which have become synonymous with modern convenience, were also trusted staples in the kitchens of pioneer families. Whether it was baking biscuits with Pillsbury flour or leavening bread with Fleischmann's yeast, these products played a vital role in sustaining frontier communities. Each item on the shelf tells a story of innovation and perseverance, from Arm & Hammer's iconic baking soda to the reliable consistency of Quaker Oats. These brands not only provided essential ingredients for cooking and baking, but also represented a connection to the comforts of home amid the rugged landscape of the Old West. In a time when life on the frontier was characterized by hardship and uncertainty, the familiarity of these brands must have offered a sense of reassurance and continuity. They were a link to the familiar routines of everyday life, even in the most remote corners of the western frontier. As you browse the shelves of the general store, you can't help but marvel at the ingenuity of the pioneers who relied on these products to sustain themselves and their families. It's a reminder that even in the midst of adversity, the human spirit has always found ways to adapt and thrive.